Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into the global energy landscape, and we're using the International Energy Agency's 2024 World Energy Outlook Report to guide us.
We have a lot to cover.
Yeah, you gave us a lot of interesting excerpts from the report we're talking about today.
It's like peering into a crystal bubble,
Okay.
but with 3 different lenses.
So you're talking about the IEA's scenarios, right?
Really?
Just to make sure we're all on the same page, can we do a quick recap of the 3 scenarios?
Absolutely.
So we have the stated policies scenario, STEPS for short.
Right.
And that shows where we're headed based on what governments are actually doing.
Think of it as the business as usual path.
Okay, got it.
Then we have the announced pledges scenario, or APS.
Right.
This scenario assumes that countries will follow through on their climate commitments.
So it's the if everyone kept their promises world.
Exactly. A big if.
Right, because a lot can happen between a pledge and actual policy.
Precisely.
And lastly, we have the net zero emissions by 2050 scenario.
NZE.
NZE, yes.
This one charts a course toward net zero emissions by 2050.
So this is the most ambitious scenario.
It's the let's get serious about tackling climate change path.
Okay. And it's important to remember that none of these are predictions.
Right.
They're more like what-if explorations.
Exactly. Tools for navigating the energy landscape.
Tools for navigating the energy landscape. I like that. Okay, so before we dive into the details, what are you most curious about in this report?
Yeah, what are you hoping to learn?
Is there a particular energy source you're interested in? Or the geopolitical implications? Tell us what would make this deep dive valuable for you.
We want to make sure this exploration is relevant to your world.
Right, because this stuff can get pretty complicated. And speaking of complicated, the report makes it clear that the world is facing some serious energy security risks right now.
It's a bit like walking a tightrope while juggling flaming torches.
Okay, I like that analogy.
One wrong move, and things could get messy.
So we've got the escalating conflict in the Middle East, the ongoing war in Ukraine, increasingly fragmented energy markets.
All contributing to a sense of unease.
It's not just headlines and geopolitical maneuvering, though.
No, this stuff has real-world implications.
This stuff impacts energy prices, access to resources, maybe even disruptions to daily life.
The past few years have been a stark reminder that energy systems are more fragile than we might like to admit.
Yeah, exactly. Like that energy crisis that unfolded after the pandemic and the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
It exposed how interconnected and vulnerable we are,
It was a wake-up call for many countries.
forcing them to rethink their energy strategies.
And there's this surprising fact from the report that really jumped out at me. Nearly 200 trade measures affecting clean energy technologies have been introduced globally since 2020.
And most of those measures are restrictive.
Yeah, it's a 5-fold increase compared to the previous 5 years.
It's a sign that clean energy is getting caught up in geopolitics.
So even the supposedly safe options are facing security challenges. What does this fragmentation of the clean energy market mean for us, practically speaking?
Well, it could lead to higher costs as supply chains get disrupted.
Okay.
It also raises concerns about access to critical minerals.
And this brings us to another interesting point the report makes. Even though there's this big push for clean energy, we're simultaneously seeing a massive increase in global LNG export capacity.
Almost 50%, led by the U.S. and Qatar.
It's a bit of a paradox.
We're trying to move away from fossil fuels, but we're seeing this surge in natural gas.
And the report highlights that tension.
Right?
It points out that the prices many suppliers need to break even could be too high for developing economies to switch from coal.
It's like we're stuck in this in-between phase.
Yeah, the cleaner options aren't yet cheap enough to fully replace the dirtier ones.
It raises the question, who will benefit from this LNG wave?
Will it be a bridge to a cleaner future, or will it just lock in dependence on natural gas?
The IEA doesn't give a definitive answer,
Right.
but they offer some interesting scenarios to consider.
Like, what if countries accelerate their energy transitions and move closer to the APS or even the NCE?
Could that worsen the glut of LNG as demand for natural gas drops?
So it's a delicate balancing act.
With a lot riding on the pace and direction of global energy transitions.
It makes you realize that energy security isn't just about having enough resources.
It's about having the right resources at the right price and in the right places.
Exactly.
And speaking of having the right resources, the report emphasizes energy efficiency.
Oh, that's a good point.
It's not just about finding new sources.
It's about using the energy we have more wisely.
And there's good news here.
Oh, is there?
All 3 IEA scenarios project an increase in energy efficiency improvements,
So we're getting better at doing more with less.
which is crucial for economic and environmental reasons.
And this is where you, the listener, come in, because this isn't just about big government policies. It's about the choices we make every day.
Think about it.
Simple things like better insulation in your home, choosing energy-efficient appliances, being mindful of your energy consumption.
Even small actions can make a real difference.
It's about taking ownership of your energy footprint.
And realizing that you can contribute to a more sustainable future.
It's empowering. It's like, yeah, the world's energy system is complex, but I can still make a difference.
Absolutely.
And as we move towards a more electrified world, those individual choices become even more important.
Because electrification, while crucial for decarbonizing many sectors, also brings its own set of challenges.
Especially when it comes to critical minerals.
Ah, yes.
Batteries, solar panels, wind turbines, all those technologies require critical minerals.
And the report highlights a significant risk. Concentration.
Okay.
China currently dominates the processing of many of these minerals, from cobalt and lithium to nickel and beyond.
So we're potentially trading one dependency for another.
We're trying to move away from fossil fuels, but could end up relying heavily on one country for clean energy materials.
It's like a geopolitical puzzle with no easy answers.
Policymakers and industry leaders are grappling with this trade-off.
On the one hand, China's dominance has helped bring down the cost of clean energy technologies,
But on the other hand, it creates a potential single point of failure.
which could disrupt supply chains and hinder the global energy transition. So what are the implications of this reliance on China? And are there any efforts being made to diversify supply chains? We'll definitely need to unpack that further.
Yes, definitely.
But first, let's shift our focus from the supply side to the demand side.
Okay.
The report points to a group of countries that are about to become major players in the global energy landscape: emerging market and developing economies, particularly those in Asia.
These economies are projected to be the primary drivers of global electricity demand growth.
And we're not talking about small increases here.
The report projects that electricity demand in these regions could nearly double by 2050.
It's like adding another Japan to the grid every year for the next 25 years.
It highlights the scale of the energy challenge, but also the immense opportunity.
Think about all the investments needed to build the infrastructure and generate the electricity to meet this demand.
It's a potential gold rush for clean energy technologies.
So we've got this massive surge in demand on the horizon, coupled with geopolitical tensions and supply chain vulnerabilities.
It sounds a bit daunting,
But amidst all this, the report highlights some truly positive trends.
particularly in the realm of clean power.
What's the good news? What's giving you hope?
Well, even under current policies, clean power sources are projected to outpace electricity demand growth by 20% to 2030.
So even though we're adding all this new demand, we're still managing to green the grid,
Exactly.
and renewables are leading the charge.
Solar PV is expected to be the fastest growing source of electricity, followed by wind, hydro, and nuclear.
This is where it gets really interesting for me, because it shows that the energy transition isn't just some abstract concept.
It's happening right now, all around us.
And you'll likely see it reflected in your own electricity mix in the coming years.
You might even be able to choose a clean energy plan from your electricity provider.
Let's dive a bit deeper into some of the specific technologies driving this clean power surge.
Okay.
The report mentions heat pumps as being a key player in decarbonizing buildings.
They're incredibly efficient at both heating and cooling.
So crucial for reducing emissions from the building sector. I've heard about heat pumps, but I'll admit I don't fully understand how they work. Can you give us a quick ELI5 explanation?
Imagine a refrigerator, but in reverse.
Okay.
Instead of moving heat out of your fridge, a heat pump moves heat from the outside air into your home to warm it up. In the summer, it reverses the process, moving heat out of your house to cool it down.
Okay.
And it uses a small amount of electricity to move a larger amount of heat, making it super efficient.
So it's like a 2-for-1 deal, heating and cooling in one efficient package.
Exactly. But here's something that puzzled me. The report mentioned that global heat pump sales actually slowed in 2023 after years of strong growth.
What's going on there? Did people suddenly decide they don't like saving energy?
Well, falling natural gas prices made gas heating more competitive.
Okay.
There were also some policy shifts that might have slowed down incentives.
So it's a reminder that even when a technology makes sense, there are always market forces to consider.
Exactly.
It's a complex interplay of factors.
The question is this slowdown a blip or a sign of a larger trend?
And what does it mean for building decarbonization?
Good questions.
Okay, let's move on to another technology that's been capturing everyone's imagination. Electric vehicles.
EVs, they're on the fast track.
EV sales are booming, on track to represent over 20% of all new car sales in 2024.
And China is leading the charge, with EVs expected to account for nearly half of all car sales there by the end of this year.
It's clear that EVs are gaining momentum.
Driven by falling battery prices, government incentives, and growing consumer awareness.
But let's be real, EVs are still more expensive up front,
That's a valid point.
even with those price reductions.
And the infrastructure needs to catch up.
We need more charging stations.
Faster charging times, a more robust grid to support widespread adoption.
It's a chicken and egg problem.
People are hesitant to buy EVs if the infrastructure isn't there.
But the infrastructure won't get built if there isn't enough demand for EVs.
It's a classic dilemma.
But one that's being addressed through government investment, private sector innovation, and consumer demand.
As more people experience the benefits of EVs, the demand will continue to grow.
And the infrastructure will follow.
Hopefully.
So it's a positive feedback loop, hopefully.
Let's hope so.
Speaking of feedback loops, let's talk about coal.
Ah, yes, the coal conundrum.
On the one hand, global coal demand hit a record high in 2023.
Driven largely by China and India.
But on the other hand, the IEA projects that coal use for power generation will peak around 2025.
So we're looking at a short-term surge followed by a long-term decline.
Why the surge if we're supposedly moving towards a cleaner energy future?
It's partly due to the global energy crisis. When natural gas prices spiked, some countries turned back to coal
as a cheaper alternative.
But the bigger picture is that the economics of coal are becoming less favorable.
Because of renewables.
The rapid expansion of solar and wind is making coal less competitive.
It's like a slow-motion energy revolution.
The old guard is gradually being replaced by the new kids on the block.
But it's not a uniform transition.
Some countries are moving faster than others.
And for those that are heavily reliant on coal, the shift will be more challenging.
Absolutely.
It's a reminder that the energy transition won't be a smooth process.
There will be bumps along the way.
And that brings us to a potential game changer.
Hydrogen.
The fuel of the future, or so we've been told.
The report acknowledges the potential of hydrogen.
Particularly for decarbonizing sectors where electrification is difficult.
Like heavy industry and long-haul transportation.
But it also injects a dose of realism.
Not all hydrogen is created equal.
Meaning?
The key for climate goals is low-emissions hydrogen. Produced from renewable energy sources or from fossil fuels with carbon capture.
You're talking about green hydrogen and blue hydrogen, right?
Exactly.
Green hydrogen is produced through electrolysis using renewable electricity, making it virtually emissions-free.
And blue hydrogen is produced from natural gas, but the emissions are captured and stored.
So we're essentially cleaning up the conventional production process.
Precisely.
But the report suggests that scaling up low-emissions hydrogen production won't be easy.
There are challenges.
Like what?
Cost is a major factor.
Okay.
Electrolysis is currently more expensive than producing hydrogen from fossil fuels.
Even with carbon capture.
And we need dedicated infrastructure for hydrogen. Pipelines, storage facilities.
It sounds like we're still in the early stages of the hydrogen hype cycle.
A lot of potential, but a lot of hurdles to overcome.
And the report projects significant growth in low-emissions hydrogen production, but it's still well below what's needed for the net zero emissions scenario.
It's a long way to go.
So will hydrogen live up to its hype? And if so, which sectors are most likely to benefit from its use in the near term? These are questions we'll need to explore further.
Definitely.
But before we get too deep into the weeds, let's zoom out and reconnect to the big picture. Climate action and sustainability.
The energy transitions we're talking about are all about addressing climate change.
It's easy to get lost in the details, but we can't lose sight of the end goal.
And the IEA report offers a sobering reminder.
What's that?
The stated policy scenario, based on current policies, is simply not enough to keep global warming in check.
So we need more ambitious action.
As outlined in the announced pledges scenario and the net zero emissions scenario.
So it's not just about making incremental improvements, it's about transforming our energy systems.
Exactly.
And that raises some big questions. What specific policy measures are needed to achieve these more ambitious scenarios? What are the trade-offs? What are the potential challenges? And most importantly, what role can individuals play in driving this transformation?
These are all important questions.
It's a lot to unpack. That's what the deep dive is all about.
Stay tuned as we continue our exploration in Part 2.
We'll be delving deeper into these questions and uncovering some of the uncertainties and opportunities that lie ahead.
We'll be back after a short break.
And we'll leave you with this thought to ponder. The IEA report highlights the tension between our reliance on China for critical minerals and the need to diversify supply chains for a secure and sustainable energy future.
How do we balance these competing priorities?
It's something to chew on as we continue our journey.
We'll see you soon.
See you soon. Welcome back to our deep dive into the IEA's World Energy Outlook Report.
Glad to be back.
Before the break, we were talking about hydrogen.
Yes, the potential of hydrogen.
The challenges of scaling it up.
It's a promising fuel with a lot of hurdles to overcome.
Right, because there's so much buzz around hydrogen these days.
It seems like everyone's talking about it.
But it's important to remember that not all hydrogen is created equal.
Especially when it comes to its climate impact.
So for those who might be new to the hydrogen hype, can you give us a quick breakdown?
Of what makes hydrogen low emissions.
Exactly.
Okay, so the most common way to produce hydrogen today uses natural gas
Right.
in a process that releases carbon dioxide.
So not low emissions.
Not at all.
There are cleaner ways to produce hydrogen.
There are a couple of ways to produce it with a much smaller carbon footprint.
You're talking about green hydrogen and blue hydrogen, right?
Exactly.
Can you explain the difference for our listener?
Absolutely. So green hydrogen is produced through electrolysis,
Electrolysis.
basically using electricity to split water molecules into hydrogen and oxygen.
Hmm.
And if that electricity comes from renewable sources, the process is virtually emissions-free.
So it's clean hydrogen powered by clean electricity.
A double win for the climate.
What about blue hydrogen? How does that work?
Blue hydrogen starts with natural gas, but it uses carbon capture technology to trap the emissions.
Okay, so it's like cleaning up the conventional production process.
Exactly. You're capturing the emissions before they reach the atmosphere.
Interesting.
Both green and blue hydrogen offer a pathway to decarbonize sectors where electrification is difficult,
Like heavy industry.
and long-haul transportation.
Okay, that makes sense.
But as we mentioned before,
Right.
scaling up low-emissions hydrogen production is not without its challenges.
The IE report highlighted some significant hurdles.
Yes, several hurdles.
What are the biggest ones?
Well, cost is a major factor.
Okay.
Electrolysis is currently more expensive than producing hydrogen from fossil fuels, even with carbon capture.
So we're back to that clean energy dilemma. The cleaner options are usually more expensive.
At least initially, that's often the case.
What else is holding back the hydrogen revolution?
Infrastructure is another big challenge.
Okay.
We need dedicated pipelines and storage facilities for hydrogen, which requires significant investment,
It's not just about producing the hydrogen, it's about getting it where it needs to go.
and storing it safely.
It's like building a whole new energy ecosystem.
Precisely.
And then there are all the policy and regulatory hurdles.
Governments need to create the right incentives to encourage production and adoption.
So it's a complex challenge that requires a lot of moving parts to come together.
Innovation, investment, supportive policies, it all has to align.
But even with all those challenges, the potential benefits of hydrogen are huge.
It could be a game changer for those hard-to-decarbonize sectors,
Industries like steel and cement.
which are major emitters,
And it could also revolutionize long-haul transportation.
especially for trucks and ships, which are difficult to electrify.
It's exciting to think about the possibilities.
There's a lot of potential there.
But let's shift gears a bit and bring this back to our listeners.
Let's talk about what all this means for their everyday lives.
Because it's easy to get lost in those big global trends.
But these energy transitions will affect all of us.
The choices we make as individuals, the cars we drive, the appliances we use, they all contribute to shaping the energy landscape.
It's true, individual choices matter.
And those choices are influenced by lots of factors.
Government policies, company investments, even just social norms.
It's a complex web of forces, but we have agency within that system.
We can make a difference.
So what are some key takeaways from this deep dive that listeners can actually apply to their own lives?
What are some practical steps they can take to contribute to a more sustainable energy future?
Yeah, what can people actually do?
Well, first and foremost, energy efficiency.
It's not the most glamorous topic.
But it's one of the most effective ways to save money and reduce emissions.
And you mentioned some simple things individuals can do, like improving insulation and choosing energy-efficient appliances.
Right, those are great starting points.
Are there any other easy things people can do?
Absolutely. Think about your transportation habits.
Okay,
Could you walk, bike, or take public transportation more often?
good point.
And if you're buying a new car, consider an electric vehicle.
But what about those concerns we discussed earlier regarding charging infrastructure and the cost of EVs?
Those are valid concerns, but the landscape is changing quickly.
How so?
Governments are investing in charging infrastructure, automakers are offering more affordable EV models, and battery technology is improving all the time.
So it's becoming easier to make the switch.
Much easier than it was even a few years ago.
And what about policy? Can individuals influence the policies that shape the energy landscape?
Absolutely, staying informed and engaged is crucial.
What can people do?
Vote for candidates who prioritize clean energy, advocate for stronger climate policies, even just contacting your elected officials to express your views.
It's about using your voice and your vote to create the future you want.
Exactly.
And beyond those concrete actions, just staying curious and continuing to learn is important.
The energy landscape is constantly evolving.
That's why we do this show.
Exactly. It's important to stay up to date.
Resources like the IEA's report are valuable tools for understanding these complexities.
Absolutely.
And there are so many other great resources out there.
Websites, podcasts, books, documentaries.
So much information available to anyone who wants to learn.
It's really empowering.
To realize that you don't have to be an expert to make informed decisions.
And contribute to a better future.
The more we understand about energy, the better decisions we can make.
And the better equipped we'll be to face the challenges and opportunities ahead.
So to sum up, we've got a lot of work to do to create a truly sustainable energy future.
But there are also a lot of reasons to be optimistic,
There's so much innovation happening.
and individuals have a crucial role to play in driving this transformation forward.
It's a collective effort, but every action counts.
From the smallest changes to the biggest policy decisions, it all adds up.
Well said. So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
From the geopolitical risks and the rise of LNG to the clean power surge and the potential of hydrogen.
But as we head into the final part of our explanation, I'm curious to hear from you, the listener.
What are your biggest takeaways from what we've discussed so far?
What are your hopes and concerns about the future of energy?
Let us know what you're thinking. We'll be back after a short break to delve into some of the uncertainties and opportunities that lie ahead.
And what they mean for you.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've covered a lot in our exploration of the global energy landscape. From geopolitical tensions to the rise of LNG.
We talked about the clean power surge and the potential of hydrogen.
But as we look to the future,
Uncertainty is a big factor.
the IEA report acknowledges that the energy landscape is constantly changing.
It's a complex system with so many variables.
It's like trying to predict the weather a year in advance.
Exactly. Too many factors could throw off our prediction.
The IEA doesn't try to give a single definitive answer,
Instead, they explore different scenarios.
based on assumptions about how those key factors might play out.
Okay, so let's embrace the uncertainty.
Uncertainty is a part of the process.
What are some of the biggest question marks about the future of energy?
And how can we make better decisions today, even with all this uncertainty?
Good questions.
Well, one of the biggest uncertainties is the future of global energy demand.
How much energy will the world need in the coming decades?
That's the million-dollar question.
It depends on so many things.
Population growth, economic development, technological advancements, even just lifestyle choices,
And those factors can be hard to predict.
especially over the long term.
Will we see continued economic growth in emerging markets?
Will new technologies emerge that change everything?
Will people embrace more sustainable lifestyles?
These are all open questions that will have a huge impact on the energy landscape.
Another big uncertainty is the pace of technological innovation.
We've seen amazing progress in renewables, batteries, and hydrogen.
But it's impossible to say which technologies will win out in the long run.
And how quickly those technologies will be adopted.
Think about the early days of the internet.
No one could have predicted how it would transform our lives.
Same thing could happen with energy technologies.
Maybe we're on the verge of a breakthrough that revolutionizes the way we use energy.
It's both exciting and a little scary.
It's the unknown, but it's also full of potential.
So how do we make decisions today when we don't know what the future holds?
Well, that's where flexibility and adaptability come in.
We need energy systems that can evolve.
As new technologies emerge and new challenges arise.
So not putting all our eggs in one basket, so to speak.
Exactly. Diversification is key.
Investing in smart grids.
And creating an environment that encourages innovation.
That's how we navigate this uncertain future.
And then, of course, there's the geopolitical wild card.
We talked about the energy security risks associated with the war in Ukraine.
And the conflict in the Middle East.
Those situations are still unfolding.
And who knows what other geopolitical events might happen in the future.
International relations can change so quickly.
And those changes can have a ripple effect on energy markets and supply chains.
It reminds us that energy security is about more than just having enough resources.
It's about having access to those resources no matter what's happening in the world.
At a price we can afford.
Exactly. We need reliable access.
And that requires us to think strategically.
Diversifying our energy sources, strengthening partnerships with other countries.
And building infrastructure that can withstand shocks.
We have to be prepared for anything.
So we've got these uncertainties. Demand, technology, geopolitics.
It's a lot to juggle.
It can feel overwhelming.
But it's important to remember that there are also opportunities.
The energy transition isn't just about avoiding risks.
It's also about creating new possibilities.
For economic growth.
Job creation.
And technological advancement.
It's about building a better future.
And those opportunities are everywhere.
We've already talked about the growth of renewables.
What other opportunities are you excited about?
Well, energy efficiency has enormous potential.
We can make huge strides just by using energy more efficiently.
From homes and businesses to entire industries and cities.
There's so much room for improvement.
And so many new technologies and strategies emerging.
Smart grids, building automation, waste heat recovery, the list goes on.
We're just scratching the surface of what's possible.
And as we electrify more and more sectors,
from transportation to buildings,
we create even more opportunities for innovation.
And batteries, charging infrastructure, renewable energy integration.
There's a whole new industrial revolution.
Driven by the need for a cleaner energy future.
And these opportunities aren't limited to developed countries.
Emerging economies will be major players in the energy transition.
They'll be driving demand for clean technologies.
And they'll be leading the way in innovation and entrepreneurship.
The energy transition is a global effort.
With the potential to benefit everyone.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the IEA's World Energy Outlook, what's the message you want to leave our listeners with?
I think the key message is that the future of energy is uncertain, but we all have a role to play.
It's easy to feel powerless in the face of these global challenges.
But our choices matter.
From the everyday decisions we make,
To the policies we support.
to the way we engage with the world around us.
We can all contribute to creating a more sustainable energy future.
The energy transition isn't just something that's happening to us.
It's something we're actively shaping.
We have the power to make a difference.
And the IEA report provides a roadmap to guide us.
So let's keep learning.
Keep exploring.
And keep pushing for a better future.
Thank you for joining us on the Deep Dive.
We hope you enjoyed our exploration of the global energy landscape.
And we encourage you to continue learning about these crucial issues.
Because the future of energy is in our hands.
That's the Deep Dive. Signing off.